Hello, welcome to Caring Connections. I'm Salley Gibney. You know, each of us make caring connections more times than we even realize. My guests today are four folks who make fabulous caring connections everywhere they go. I'd like to welcome Bob.
Hi, Sally. It's really great to be here. I'm Bob Hodling, and I'm the director of the East Greenwich Drug Program, and I really appreciate you giving us an opportunity to be with you today.
I'm so happy you're here.
Hi, Sally. Thank you for having us. My name's Bree Knight. I'm going to be a freshman at the University of Rhode Island this fall, and I've been working with Bob for about 3 years now.
Fantastic.
Thank you for having me, Sally. My name is Dennis. I'm going into junior year at East Greenwich High School, and I just started working with Allie and Bree and Bob about 4 months ago.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Hi, Sally. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. And I am going to be a senior at East Greenwich High School, and I've been working with Bob for over a year now.
Now, all of you are making fabulous connections with all of the students in East Greenwich. So tell us how this all works, Bob.
Well, as the director of the town's drug program, a portion of what I do is education, prevention type initiatives, and it's been an honor for me for a number of years to work with some incredibly talented kids.
Yeah.
And these guys fall into that category. And now more than ever, especially post-COVID,
I was just going to mention, it's more important than ever.
using the skills, because it's one thing for an adult to disseminate information, but these guys do a lot of work in terms of connecting with their peers, serving as role models for younger people, because again, we have a nation that has a proliferation of mental health conditions, substance-related concerns, and again, we're seeing as early as the 3rd grade some young people really negatively impacted by some mental health issues and concerns.
Who would have thought? You know, you really don't have any thought at that age that it would be happening.
Yeah.
Tell us about it. How did you get involved?
I, as a freshman, I wasn't that social, and I met this girl in one of my classes who was actually the leader of ASAP, which is one of the clubs that Mr. Bob has founded at our school.
And what does that stand for?
So that stands for Assess, Support, Action, Proceed, and Prevent, and it's a group focused on improving the mental health of students in high school. There's a bunch of different programs that kind of lead from that, including ASAP 2, which is at the middle school. We have Pause, which is focused on 5th and 6th graders, and then Be Smart, which is the program that we recently implemented.
Wow, that sounds great. I want to hear more about that. And how did you get involved?
So originally, I followed Bree around for most of my sophomore year to get involved with ASAP originally to begin with. Then Bob came over, talked to Bree and I about implementing something for the 3rd graders after COVID. And I was so excited that he even thought to even ask me, along with Bree, to do it. And I go, what not a better way to start getting those connections building with the elementary kids? Because I remember Mr. Bob coming into all of our classes in 5th grade doing the character lessons. So I was like, this is going to be really fun. So we jumped on that opportunity, and then I brought Dennis along too.
Yeah.
You came along.
And you came along, and how did that happen?
Essentially, I just didn't have a ride home from school, and Allie asked if I wanted to jump in. And yeah.
The rest is history, and it worked out great.
You never knew when you asked for that ride what you were getting into.
Not a clue.
He had no choice.
Oh, that is so great.
Yeah.
I think I am so impressed by all this, and I want to hear, how does this work? Tell me what's going on.
Yeah, again, we're always trying to come up with creative ways to connect with the community. So in addition to working with young kids, middle school kids and high school people, we also do a lot of work with adults as well.
Oh, really?
And in terms of getting out information, young people are tremendous role models. One thing in terms of creating this model, I might have had something to do with creating the model. These guys have taken it to places you would have never imagined. They've created strategies to connect with the elementary young people. They've actually enhanced and created their own curricula. So in addition to helping people, what it's done is it's actually helped them, and they've demonstrated skills and taken the program way further than I would have even envisioned to begin with. So young people are some of the greatest communicators and disseminators of information.
I so believe in our youth. I think you guys, I mean, look what we did with with the world. We didn't do such a great job, so we're counting on you to take over. So tell me, how does it work with the little kids?
Yeah, so with the little kids, we go down to 3rd grade, and this year we'll be working with 4th graders as well. So what we do is we have a set of 5 to 6 lesson plans that we'll go in, we'll ask them a few questions, we'll play a game to really help them apply the understanding we're trying to push forwards, and then we'll kind of wrap it up, we'll ask them some questions, have some discussions with them, and we really try to make it applicable. We try to give them examples from our own lives of what we're trying to teach them, and really just kind of make sure they understand that there are people there for them, help them understand emotions and behavioral and social awareness.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
And I imagine because you're young, that the kids listen to you. It's not like somebody like me or even you, Bob, as great as you are.
Even me, yeah, exactly. I'm not as cool as I used to think I was.
We still are.
We're still cool?
Yeah.
All right, that's good.
So how do you find, I want you to share, how do you feel connecting with the kids?
I feel like that connecting with the kids, I did definitely going in the first time. It was nerve-wracking for us, much as it was for them to have high school kids come down and just be like, hey, we're going to teach you guys, but it's going to be a fun, new direction of it. But they took to it extremely well. I know that when we first walked in, it was interesting to see the dynamic of the classroom, especially post-COVID, because I know when we were in 3rd grade, for us, we would never be jumping around or like having issues just sitting in your chair listening. But when you walked in those classrooms, they were just so hyperactive because they were behind a screen the entire time for over 2 years.
Wow. So
that was just truly something really just mind-blowing to us about how do we redirect this energy and put it towards the skills that they were interrupted in learning.
And how did you do that?
So we did that with each of the lesson plans, as Bree was saying. We direct them basically by starting off with questions to get their minds focused on what we're going to do. So sometimes the questions will be as simple as, what are emotions? That's our first lesson. We focus on emotions.
Wow.
So basically we just ask them what emotions are. And because they're so excited, we have all the kids raising their hands, jumping up and down to answer it. So it takes a long time to go through it, but it's really great for each of the kids to feel like they have a voice and they can be heard too. So go through that, and then we'll do typically a fun activity alongside it. So with the emotions one, what we do is we do a charade game. So with that, the kids get different emotions in a little bag, and they get to choose one. But what they don't know is we'll put like shocked and excited in the same one, in the same bag. So if they grab one, they might not be able to tell which is which. So that's when we start implementing the lessons of, oh, well, what if we said it was for a surprise birthday party? Is that going to be shocked, or is that going to be excited? Because it could be both.
Yeah.
So you have to understand that even though you have to understand the basics of emotions, you also have to understand the surroundings of it too. So they get the regulation and the awareness at the same time.
Wow.
And then we'll go into, at the end, asking them if they have any other questions. But we'll also wrap it up saying that sometimes you need words to answer the questions. Because with the charades, we try and make them read their facial expressions due to COVID with all the masks.
Wow. How did you come up with all this? Dennis, how do you tell us what you do with this?
I'm kind of been, we like to call me Allie's intern a little bit. I've kind of just been learning from her a lot. But I've always worked with kids. I have 2 amazing little cousins who live right down the street from me, and I love hanging out with them. I used to work a lot one-on-one with babysitting or camps, anything that involves children. And so it's great to, instead of just being there for them, is being there and helping them. Because a lot of these kids, and I've seen it in a lot of little children I know, and even myself a lot, I've seen that COVID really truncated them and made them unable to communicate as well as they should be or could be. And so I think things like the emotion plans, especially with the differences between things like shocked and excited, it's hard for them to kind of understand. And it seems like an exaggeration until you see it in person. But I think what we're doing is really helpful for them, because I know that a lot of kids were talking about how, like, oh, that was really fun, I want them to come back. I actually am learning a lot.
That is so, and I'm sure it's very helpful having you as a boy, a guy come in, because they see a lot of women, a lot of teachers, a lot of aides, a lot of whatever, and to have a young guy like you, excuse me for saying guy, but come in and you're cool, you're really neat, and they can identify with you. And I think that's really, really
Absolutely.
important.
And I know that he loves to say that he's my intern, but truly he's turned into such a huge mentor for a lot of these kids as well.
The kids adore him.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
I mean, what's not to adore, right? You know,
All right.
seriously. But that is so nice. So this is the younger children. So take us now forward to the old, middle school. What goes on there?
Sally, I think that one of the things important is developmentally, we try to go where people are developmentally. So in the elementary school, we're kind of trying to create skills development and early awareness and some
Yeah.
regulation.
Starting early.
Yeah,
When
so-
you get to the middle school, it's a combination of that. But now kids are beginning to explore and understand some of the issues. Some kids are coming out with anxiety conditions, depression, and they're a little bit more aware. So what we're doing in the middle school is doing a combination of education, but also supporting that group. And that'll filter up into the high school as well, because ASAP will take on dynamics where it's an educative program, but on top of that, it's a club, it's a social activity where kids are around friends that understand
And they feel
them,
comfortable with
and
it.
they feel comfortable.
Yeah. You know, who would have thought that children so young are going through all of this? And to start out early and give them a foundation so they can go forward, that's huge. It's really huge.
That's really where most of our work is. I mean, at the middle school, you know, they've have these supports in place already. We're just trying to add to that. Same with the high school, they have certain supports, but we want to add to that. At the elementary school, there is no real support system for kids who are struggling with these issues, because there's kind of this stigma that, oh, they're so young, these kids are 8, 9, 10 years old, you know, they're not being taught about emotions and anxiety and how it's okay to feel these things until they reach middle school. So we really want to get in there and make sure they have this basis of understanding before they reach that point.
But now you've been doing this program for how long?
So we started this year.
So
actually.
the thing is that the kids in middle school haven't had the benefit of this.
No.
So you really need to work with them as well, and not to mention the kids in high school. How are you dealing with that?
Well, I think one of the things that we do in high school, again, because I said it's a bifurcated thing, one half is fun, and then the other half is education. And I think one of the things is, because at the high school level, now you're really seeing a manifestation of a number of issues, depression, identity. We have a significant portion of the LGBTQ plus population. You're starting to look at some of the social and emotional considerations that get into race, diversity. So we want to create an arena where people feel that they belong, they're connected, they're respected for who they are, and then at the same time train these guys. I've been working with these guys throughout the summer, doing a series of trainings on how to, speak to middle school, high school students. So it's a combination of both of those things. But the power of belonging, like this show that you're talking about, is incredibly powerful.
Now, how are you helping, excuse me, your peers? How does it work for you being members of the high school?
So I think for me, it's a lot of what I've noticed is, because I started when I was initially struggling, I think I started really young. I think it was 5th grade was the first time I had felt what I identified as a bad feeling. And so I kind of grew up with that, and I saw that I was starting this a lot earlier than most kids had. And so when I realized I had the resources to help them and to deal with it, and I realized that's what I should do. So as part of my senior project, what I want to do is a peer counseling program where kids can kind of identify that it's okay to have bad feelings. Because sure, we're starting in the elementary school, right? But I think, like you said, the middle schoolers haven't had the benefit of this yet. And so I think our best resources are each other. And once we start being able to communicate, hey, I feel X, Y, and Z, then we'll be able to come up with a solution to being more comfortable and able, I guess. Yeah.
I can't tell you how impressed I am with all of this, because just hearing you talk, this is so important. It's so important, and especially given any situation, but following COVID, how has that impacted all of this?
Like, it's hard to explain. It's just seeing so many people come back so different after such a relatively short period of time. I mean, COVID felt long, but realistically, lockdown only lasted a year or so, and you see all these people come back completely different. Personality, physical appearance, everyone changed in their own way. And I think a lot of people grew, but a lot of people got set back, and I think it's hard for them to recognize that they got set back. It was definitely hard for me to realize that. And once I did, I started talking to people for the first time in a long time, and I realized how much better that made my life. The communication aspect of, just talking to people again. Because I think we were so used to just being able to live without communication that we forgot what it was like to interpersonally connect.
And you're also dealing with so much more. I mean, those cell phones. I mean, we were at the table, we were just away, our family, and everyone had a cell phone. And I said, wait a minute, put those things away. We're on vacation. But it's become such a part of life where you're sitting next to someone and you're texting them rather than talking to them. And how do you find this? How do you overcome this?
Personally, I don't mind it because I think in a way, you always have someone to talk to, right? Like, my person on speed dial will always be the person to my right. But I think it's just very helpful for some people, but also very hurtful, because the idea of not having a conversation face to face, I think it's just not the same.
No.
There's not like a fancy word to describe it. It's not the same. Being able to communicate in person, being able to identify tone and like not try to guess every third word is just
Yeah. And Bob, how do you deal with this? Because you have done so much for this town, for this program. How do you come up with these things?
Well, I think that, one thing, even though you do something for 40 years, each day is a new day, there's a new challenge, there's a new issue. And just to reiterate what Dennis was talking about, not only are people developmentally delayed, I'm the king of acronyms, by the way, so we created this thing a little while back called Interrupted Community Engagement Dynamic, and it comes out to be ICED, and where people are frozen in developmental stages. So for example, if you haven't been in commune with your peers for a couple of years, and you're not going through some of those rutting rituals and communication rituals, to some extent you can be frozen developmentally. So as the kids were saying a little bit earlier, you're seeing young people who are in the third grade, who have the emotional capacity of first graders. And so what we're trying to do here is I want to ask the experts, the young people who are experiencing these things themselves. It's one thing for me to look at it as an adult, but one of the great advantages that I have in my job is I'm around people who are experts, and I'm getting the pulse of the community and hearing things like Dennis was just saying, and playing off of the creativity of these guys, because they're closer to the experience than I am.
And how do you all, what can you do to help us? I know as a grandmother and I see things from my perspective. How can you help us look at things from your perspective?
I think just being open, honestly, to having a conversation, like a sit-down conversation. Take away the phones, like you've been saying. I know the phones are a big distraction, but in all honesty, just sitting down and having those conversations about, oh, this is what I've been feeling, and like, how can you help? But that's going to be coming from those conversations, because every single person is going to have a different experience, and you're going to need to be able to work with each other. And it's just the fact that you got to build those connections, and you got to communicate through all of it. And I think that's what helped mainly all of us, especially through COVID, because I know I was always talking to you, I was always on FaceTime with you during school, even though it was like you're so not with anybody. It was so definitely isolated, but when you have those people who you can go to and you can feel like you can talk, it's definitely a major advantage in helping you through those.
Yeah, and not only does having these conversations kind of help other people understand where you're currently at, I feel like it also kind of helps the person talking understand more about themselves.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I know, like Allie said, during COVID, we were on FaceTime constantly. Allie and I have been best friends for, what, 6 years
grade.
now?
Wow, that's so cool.
You know, and so COVID was really rough because we weren't able to see each other. But, you know, we still found that way to talk, because as harmful as phones can be when you're in person, when you're far apart, it can be extremely helpful.
Exactly.
And not only did talking to each other help us understand more about each other and where we were at the moment, it helped us understand more about ourselves. I mean, for me personally, you know, like Bob said, we have a very high percentage of LGBTQ students in our school, including me, and that was something I discovered during COVID. And since then, you know, I really wanted to help other people understand what it's like, kind of help other people discover themselves. And that's, you know, that's one of the big reasons why I like this, is kind of helping other people understand where different people are at.
And it's okay.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's okay to be different. It's okay to celebrate yourself and to be who you are. And I think to give people permission to be themselves and to be who they are. I'm wondering if each of you could just share what you wish we as parents, grandparents, and adults should understand.
I know one big one for me is, you know, letting parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, you know, older people understand is our mental problems are not always your fault. I know a lot of parents tend to blame themselves when their children have anxiety, depression, etc. But it's not their fault. You know, these things are natural, and what we're going through right now causes it to happen, and it does not reflect, or it does not always reflect on the parent.
Wow. That's huge. Huge. What would you say?
I think I would say just the biggest thing is, if you're a parent or even if you're a relative, it's just important that you recognize you may not understand what they're feeling, but you gotta try to see how they're feeling, because we're in different times now. So it's gonna be the gap in between how you grew up and how I grew up, which is obviously gonna be there, but it's important to understand that as the times change, your mindset has to change as well with the growing times. Because I know with COVID, it was a stretch for some people to be like, oh, well, you're just at home, it shouldn't be that big of an issue. But as Bree said, it's not the parents' fault or any of the relatives' fault, but it's just when times change for us, it's a different period than it was for you or for like my mom. So it's always just like, just make sure that you're trying to just see what they're going through and understand that it may not be exactly what you went through, but it's okay, because at the end of the day, you're still all family, you still all have each other's back.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think, Dennis?
I think I'm a very lucky person to have a wonderful family. My grandmother is one of the kindest people I've ever met. My father is a super wise person, and my mother is a therapist, and that relationship with my mom enabled me to, you know, understand a lot of things that for a lot of people must have been difficult to comprehend. And she taught that to me in a way that was easy for a teenager to understand. And I think the thing that all parents need to know, and that I think my parents definitely know, is kids struggle, you know? It's, we all have our dumb decisions and we all have our crazy mess ups, but if you just give us a chance and let us find our way through it, then it'll be so much for the better.
And just love them for who they are and what they are. And I know it's tough, you know, it's tough for us, you know, because we think we have the answers and we don't. And to be able to admit that we don't. Bob, share some thoughts that you have about this.
You know, just to play off of what these guys were talking about is we give a lot of tacit approval to social emotional learning without even knowing what that is. But I think in today's world, considering its pace, the number of social issues, some of the dynamics that young people are talking about right now, social emotional learning is at least as important as academic learning. As a matter of fact, in many ways, you can catch up.
More important.
I'm not making fun or knocking down academic learning, which is obviously essential. But if you don't feel good about yourself, if you don't feel you belong, if you don't feel like there's a purpose to some of those existential considerations, you're going to have a problem. And I think that moving forward, I think one of the best things that we can do as adults is to recognize some of the things that these guys were speaking about, but on top of that, recognize that today's world's a little bit different than the world
Oh,
that I
gosh,
grew up in.
so different.
You know, and
Yeah.
I think one last thing too is for a parent, when you look in the mirror, have you ever been, maybe we can share this together, sometimes when you look into the mirror, first of all you say, I still feel like a kid, but I don't look like a kid. But on top of that, you know, you'll be stressing out, or you'll be saying something to a grandkid or your own kid, and you look and you go, oh my God, I look exactly like my father and mother.
And
Or
I
you
sound exactly like my mother.
So if you ever want to wonder
Yeah.
what kind of an influence parents have on kids, good most of the time and bad some of the time, your kids will listen to you. Your kids know that you're there. They might not always apply it immediately, but long after, down the line, they're going to be your friends. They're going to be hanging out with you 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the line. So that it might seem like you're not connecting, but there's things that are getting through.
Yeah, I know it's just so huge. I know that we're probably winding down, so would each of you just say some final words that you'd like to share with our audience? This is, we have to do a comeback. We're going to do a part 2 of this. We definitely have to.
I'll do it. I got the best job on the planet Earth. I tell people all the time, I go, you know, sometimes it gets a little bit rough, but when it comes to the youth part of my job, for all the disparaging remarks people say about young people, I'm
you guys
around
are
some of the
great,
most
yeah.
talented, caring, creative individuals who really care.
Oh, I agree with you 100%.
So for me, it's a gift to work with young people.
Last words.
Just really important for people to know that there will always be someone there for them. Even if it doesn't feel like it, there will be someone, whether it's a peer, whether it's a close friend, a family member, an adult in their community, you know, that nobody is truly alone, and that's what we're there for. We want to make sure people know that it's okay to have bad feelings, and that, you know, we will be there, someone will be there.
That's so great.
Honestly, I think that self-acceptance is something really big now coming out of everything that we've been through. Just really love yourself and own who you are. In this day and age, you can be anything you want to be, and that's something so incredible. So I think that everybody should just be themselves and then live up to those expectations that you have for yourself and be the best person that you can be every day.
Wow. Dennis?
You know, Bob, you may have the best job in the world. I have the best internship in the world. And I think something I've learned very directly from that is just involve yourself in things you're not comfortable with. Get out of your comfort zone, and it'll allow you and enable you to be yourself more.
Wow. Wow. I just can't tell you how thrilled I am to have had this opportunity to be with all of you. You are just so neat and so cool, and you give such hope to wrap it up. Okay. Oh, I thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing.
No, thank
Keep
you for
doing what
having
you're
us.
This was
doing.
wonderful.
Thank
Thank
Keep
you.
doing what
very
you're
much.
doing. It's so important. It means so much. For all of you out there, I know you got as much out of this as I did. This has just been a very, very special time for me. And I hope you've heard what all of these guys have been saying. It's so important for all of us. And until next time, keep making those caring connections. They're really important, aren't they? Bye-bye.